right, guys, we're on the back side of day 3 notes, and number 3 says express the following polynomial in completely factored form. Okay, so because we are looking for the factors, remember that we can't factor unless we're equal to 0. So we'll replace our p of x or our y with a 0. And taking a look, it doesn't look like there's anything in common, so no greatest common factor. It's not a D2PS, it's not a trinomial. And what we normally would do with multiple terms like this would be factor by grouping, but we can't do that either because we have an uneven number of terms. We can't group every 2. Okay. And we can't use the quadratic formula. We can't complete the square. So we're at a loss, except what we have to do is when we run into this dead end, all right, don't forget our remaining way of trying to figure out the factors is from graphing it. And that's what you had to come up with in your brain as your solution to this problem that we have here, since nothing else that we have in our toolbox would work. So we're going to go to our calculator and we're going to type in x to the 4th minus x cubed minus 27x squared plus 25x plus 50 and hit graph. And so what we can do is we can see what the x-intercepts are, and therefore we'll know the zeros, and then we can take the zeros and turn them back into factors. So a little bit tricky on that one. A lot of people will have trouble coming up with the solution of graphing it. All right, so if we take a look, guys, you can probably see what they are from your graph. Okay? Remember, there's 4 of them because this is a degree of 4. Okay? And if we go to our graph or our table, we can go ahead and see what those are. All right, so we should end up with, we have 1 at, looks like -1. 2, 3, 4, 5. So -5 is another one. +2. And 3, 4, and +5. All right, and so when you graph this, it kind of look like kind of what we drew on the front there. All right, looks like that. But we have x equals -5, x equals -1, x equals 2, and x equals 5. Okay, I know that there's no more because this is a degree of 4, and there's our 4 zeros. So now we're going to go ahead and turn them into factors. This is going to be x plus 5, x plus 1, x minus 2, and x minus 5, and we are equal to 0. And there is our polynomial in factored form when we couldn't even factor it. All right, so good thing they didn't ask me to express the following polynomial in completely factored form and to do it algebraically, because it's not possible to do this one algebraically. We have to do it graphically. All right, guys, let's take a look at number 4. It says consider f of x, which is 4x squared plus 6x minus 3, and p of x defined by the graph below. The difference between the values of the maximum of p and the minimum of f is what? All right, so they wanted the difference between the values of the maximum of p and the minimum of f. So can we figure out, all right, so in this graph on the side here, we can find the maximum of p. Maximum is right here, and that is the number of 5. So the maximum of p is 5. The minimum of f, well, that one we're going to need our calculator for because it's an equation, and we'll have to use our minimum button. So if we go to y equals and we clear out our calculator, and we type in 4x squared plus 6x minus 3 and hit graph, I'll give you guys a little sketch of what I see. It is a parabola, okay? And it kind of comes through the x-axis here, turns around and comes back up. All right, and right here is my minimum. So I'm going to go and hit second, trace, to get my calculate menu. And I'm going to go down to number 3, which says minimum. And we did this on the front side of our notes. It's going to ask for a left bound, so put the cursor on the left side of the minimum, right bound, and then guess in the middle. And it looks like our minimum is at -0.5. 0.7499 dot dot dot, comma, negative 5.25. All right. Remember, the minimum is the y coordinate, just like our maximum here was our y coordinate of 5. Okay. So now we know our minimum of f is negative 5.25. And they want to know the difference between them. So we're going to take 5 minus, okay, for the difference, and then negative 5.25 is our minimum. And so we actually end up adding those together with those two negatives, the first one for the difference and the second one for the negative on the 5.25. And when we add them together, we end up with positive 10.25. And so choice 4 is our answer. All right, guys, let's take a look at number 5. It says that the function g of t models the average price of gas in a small town since January 1st. And look at that equation. Whew. That's a long one. And it says where t is between 0 and 10, or equal to 0 and 10, and says if g of t is the average price of gas in dollars and t represents the number of months since January 1st, they want to know what the absolute maximum of g of t reaches over the given domain is about what. All right, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to have to figure out this. Let's go ahead and graph it, and maybe we can get a visual and then more think about what they're asking us. So in my calculator, I'm going to type this long equation in. So it's going to start off with a negative 0.0049 x to the fourth plus 0.0923 x to the third minus 0.56 x squared plus 1.166x plus 3.23. And we're going to hit graph. And this is what I see, guys. So this comes up, curves, dips down a little bit, goes back up a little bit, and then off my screen. Okay. And so it says if G of T is the average price of gas in dollars, and T represents the number of months since January 1st, the absolute maximum reaches over the given domain. All right, so my problem is I'm not quite sure if the maximum is here or the maximum is here. They almost look like they come up the same amount. So I'm going to have to find two maximums. Okay, so for this little tiny peak over here, there's going to be a maximum. And for this little peak over here, there should be another maximum. So I'm not quite sure which one's higher. I can't tell from my calculator screen. So I'm going to hit second trace. I'm going to go to number 4, which is maximum. And I'm going to go on the left bound of this first curve. And then I'm going to travel over to the right bound of this first curve. And then I'm going to go ahead and try to guess in the middle of this first curve. Okay, or first peak, I guess I should say. And for this one, I end up with 1.60 dot 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 4, 4.007 dot dot dot. Okay, so now I'm going to go and hit second trace again. I'm going to go back to number 4 for my maximum, but I'm going to go over to the second peak and see if that is higher or not. So I'm going to do left bound on the second peak. Okay, right bound. And then guess in the middle. And it's going to tell me my maximum is 7.73 dot dot dot, 3.918 dot dot dot. All right. And so now we can see which point is higher. And remember, higher is the y coordinate. So you guys can see that this first one is actually the true maximum. And that 4.007 would round to 4.01. And choice 3 is the maximum, absolute maximum that g of t reaches over that given domain. All right, a little bit tricky there, but they're going to try to make them tricky. All right, last question, guys. Number 6, they said, which binomial is a factor of x to the 4th minus 4x squared minus 4x plus 8? And so we know that if we can factor this, this should be a pretty easy question. Looking at my types of factoring, nothing in common. It's not a trinomial. It's not a D2PS. So I'm going to try to factor by grouping. So out of the first group, I can factor out an x squared and be left with x squared minus 4. Out of the second group, I can pull out a negative 4 and be left with x minus 2. But why I'm confused is that these don't match, guys. And so this type of factoring will not work. Factor by grouping, those two factors in parentheses are supposed to be the same. And right now they're not coming out to be the same. So you know what? I'm going to scratch this. And I'm going to go to graph, just like we did in this first question. All right. So I'm going to go to y equals. I'm going to type in x to the 4th minus 4x squared minus 4x plus 8. Our usual system of finding things out does not work for that first question on this page, on number 3, nor this question. So when I graph it, though, I can see where it crosses the x-axis, or I can look in my table as well. But it looks like it crosses at 1 and 2. And actually, it doesn't cross at 1. It's pretty close, but it doesn't if you look at the table, okay? Only the one that we can say that it crosses at is 2. So it kind of comes down, does a wiggly squiggly thing there, and comes up. Crosses right after 1, but it crosses right on 2. And so we can say x equals 2, which therefore would turn into the factor of x minus 2. And there's our answer in choice 1. So again, another tricky question. All right, guys, I will see you guys on the next day of notes.